In the quiet town of Willow Creek, 12-year-old Emily Parker was known for her sharp eyes and vivid imagination. She lived with her mother, Laura, in a modest apartment complex managed by a domineering landlord, Mr. Harold Grayson. Harold was a tall, imposing man in his 50s, with a knack for intimidating tenants into compliance. He'd raise rents without notice, ignore repair requests, and dismiss complaints with a sneer. Emily, small for her age, often overheard tenants whispering about his tactics but felt powerless. One foggy autumn morning while walking to school, Emily noticed something odd. A crest-like emblem on a car parked near the complex's entrance. It was a silver eagle clutching a key, glinting faintly through the mist. She'd seen it before on Harold's letterhead. Curious, she memorized its details, sensing it held significance. At school, Emily shared her observation with her best friend Mia Thompson, who laughed it off. "You're always seeing mysteries, Em," Mia teased, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling. She started noticing the crest elsewhere, on a briefcase Harold carried on a sign at the town's edge. Her mother, overworked and stressed, brushed off Emily's questions. "Focus on school, honey. Don't stir trouble." Yet Emily's gut told her Harold was hiding something. She began sneaking glances at his office window, catching him meeting with unfamiliar men in suits. One evening she overheard him on the phone, mentioning Crest Holdings and keeping it quiet. Her heart raced. She was onto something. Emily's suspicions grew when she found a crumpled letter in the complex's trash, stamped with the eagle crest. It mentioned Crest Holdings LLC and property acquisitions. She didn't fully understand but knew it was big. At the library, she used the public computer to search. Crest Holdings was a shady company linked to buying low-income properties, evicting tenants, and flipping them for profit. Harold's name wasn't listed, but the crest matched perfectly. Emily told Laura, who sighed, "We can't fight him, Em. He's too powerful." Frustrated, Emily confided in her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Clara Evans, who'd been threatened with eviction. Clara's eyes widened. "That crest, I've seen it on his documents. Keep digging, child." Emily started documenting everything: photos of the car, sketches of the crest, notes on Harold's visitors. She felt like a detective, but fear crept in. Harold's temper was legendary. One day he caught her lingering near his office. "What ray you snooping for, kid?" he growled, his eyes narrowing. Emily stammered an excuse, heart pounding. She knew she had to be careful but couldn't stop. The tenants' complaints, leaky pipes, broken heaters, unfair fees were piling up, and Emily felt their weight. She wasn't just a curious kid anymore. She was their voice. The fog of secrecy around Harold was clearing, and Emily was determined to expose the truth, no matter how small she seemed. Emily's resolve strengthened as she pieced together more clues. She noticed Harold's car often left the complex late at night, heading toward the industrial part of Willow Creek. One evening, she convinced Mia to bike with her to follow him, promising it'd be an adventure. They trailed him to a nondescript warehouse, where the eagle crest was painted on a sign. Men in suits loaded boxes into a van, and Harold was there, barking orders. Emily snapped blurry photos with her phone, her hands shaking. Mia whispered, "This is creepy, Em, let's go." But Emily felt a fire inside. She was close to something big. Back home, Emily uploaded her photos to the library computer and searched for the warehouse's address. It was owned by Crest Holdings, confirming her suspicions. She found online forums where people posted about similar companies, describing how landlords used shell companies to hide shady deals. Emily realized Harold might be planning to sell their complex, evicting everyone. She told Clara, who shared stories of other tenants facing harassment. "He's been raising rents to push us out," Clara said, her voice trembling. Emily felt a pang of anger. Her neighbors, her community were at risk. She started sharing her findings with trusted tenants like Mr. Daniel Brooks, a quiet mechanic who'd lived there for decades. Daniel was skeptical but listened. "If you're right, kid, we need proof." Emily organized her evidence: photos, the letter, screenshots of Crest Holdings' shady history. She felt like a lone warrior, but doubt crept in. What if no one believed her? She was just a kid. Still, she pressed on, slipping notes under tenants' doors, urging them to meet at Clara's apartment. A dozen showed up, wary but curious. Emily presented her findings, her voice steady despite her nerves. Some tenants scoffed, but others, like Daniel, nodded thoughtfully. The meeting sparked a plan. Daniel suggested checking public records for property deeds, while Clara knew a retired lawyer, Mr. Alan Foster, who might help. Emily felt a surge of hope. People were listening. But Harold's shadow loomed. He started patrolling the complex more, eyeing tenants suspiciously. Emily overheard him talking about finalizing the sale. Time was running out. She spent nights sketching the crest, its eagle haunting her dreams. She wasn't just fighting for herself, but for Laura, Clara, Daniel, everyone. The fog of fear was lifting, replaced by a collective resolve. Emily, the little girl no one took seriously, was becoming a leader, and the enemy Crest was now her target. Emily's small coalition grew determined. Mr. Foster, the retired lawyer, agreed to help after Clara vouched for Emily's evidence. His office was a cluttered mess of legal books, but his sharp mind cut through Emily's findings like a knife. He confirmed Crest Holdings was a front, likely tied to Harold's plan to sell the complex to developers. "We need concrete proof of his ownership," Foster said, adjusting his glasses. Emily suggested checking the county clerk's office for property records. Foster was impressed. "You've got guts, kid." Emily beamed, but the weight of her role pressed harder. She couldn't let her neighbors down. The next Saturday, Emily and Daniel visited the clerk's office. Emily's heart pounded as they sifted through records. After hours, they found it: a deed linking the complex to Crest Holdings, with Harold's signature buried in fine print. Emily photocopied it, her hands trembling with excitement. Back at the complex, the tenants met again, now with Foster leading. He explained their rights. If Harold was violating lease agreements or local laws, they could fight the evictions. Emily felt a spark of victory, but Foster warned. Harold's connected. We need to be strategic. Emily kept watching Harold, noticing he met with the same suited men more frequently. One night she saw him hand off an envelope at the warehouse. She couldn't get close, but the crest on the van gleamed in the moonlight. She told Foster, who suspected bribes or payoffs. The tenants, now united, started documenting everything: late repairs, unfair fees, threats. Emily taught them to take time-stamped photos, her leadership surprising even herself. Laura, initially hesitant, began to see her daughter's strength. "I'm proud of you, Em," she said, her eyes misty. But Harold was no fool. He sensed the tenants' defiance and doubled down, issuing eviction notices to Clara and others, claiming renovation plans. Panic spread, but Emily rallied them. "We have proof now," she said, holding up the deed. Foster filed a formal complaint with the housing authority, citing illegal eviction tactics. Emily's photos and notes were attached, her meticulous work shining. The authority launched an investigation, and whispers of it reached Harold. He confronted Emily one foggy evening, his face red with fury. "You're causing trouble, little girl," he spat. Emily stood tall, her voice firm. "I'm not scared of you." The confrontation shook her, but the tenants' support kept her going. Daniel fixed Clara's leaky sink for free, a small act of defiance. Mia, now a believer, helped Emily spread the word online, posting anonymously about Crest holdings. The fog of Harold's secrecy was thinning, and Emily's courage was the light breaking through. She wasn't just a kid anymore. She was the spark of a rebellion, and the enemy Crest was losing its power. The housing authorities' investigation gained traction, and Emily's evidence became the cornerstone. Foster, with his legal expertise, drafted a petition signed by 20 tenants, demanding a freeze on evictions and a full audit of Harold's dealings. Emily felt a mix of pride and anxiety. She'd started this, but the stakes were high. Harold's behavior grew erratic. He stopped repairs entirely, leaving tenants with broken heaters as winter loomed. Emily overheard him yelling on the phone about delays and nosy kids. She knew he meant her, and it sent a chill down her spine. Emily and Mia kept digging online, finding a local reporter, Jessica Harper, who covered housing scams. Jessica met them at a cafe, intrigued by Emily's passion. "You're 12 and doing this," she marveled, flipping through Emily's notes. Jessica published an article about Crest Holdings, citing anonymous tenant accounts and the warehouse sightings. It went viral in Willow Creek, sparking outrage. Tenants from other properties recognized the Crest and shared similar stories. Emily's small spark was now a fire, but she worried about retaliation. Harold had glared at her mother, muttering threats about troublemakers. The tenants, emboldened, organized a protest outside the complex. Emily helped make signs, her hands smudged with marker ink. "No more Crest holdings," they read. Laura hesitated but joined, holding Emily's hand. Over 50 people showed up, chanting for justice. Harold watched from his office, his face pale. The housing authority, pressured by the article and protest, subpoenaed Harold's records. Foster uncovered more. Crest Holdings had bribed local officials to fast-track sales. Emily's warehouse photos tied Harold to the scheme, and the eagle crest became a symbol of his greed. One evening, Clara invited Emily over for tea, her apartment cozy despite the broken heater. "You've given us hope, child," Clara said, her voice cracking. Emily blushed, feeling the weight of her impact. But doubt lingered. Could they really win? Harold's connections ran deep, and some tenants feared he'd retaliate. Emily kept her phone close, her photos a shield. She noticed fewer suited men visiting, and Harold's car was gone for days. The fog of his influence was lifting, but Emily knew the fight wasn't over. She lay awake, picturing the crest, its eagle no longer menacing but cornered. The investigation closed in, and Emily's courage inspired others. Daniel rallied more tenants, and even Mia's parents joined the cause. The little girl no one took seriously had exposed the enemy Crest, and now Willow Creek was watching. Emily felt the town's pulse shift. She wasn't alone anymore. The battle was far from won, but the fog was clearing and justice was on the horizon. Harold's empire began to crumble as the housing authority dug deeper. Emily's photos and the deed linked Crest Holdings to multiple violations: falsified repair logs, illegal rent hikes, and coerced evictions. The viral article had drawn attention from a state senator, Rachel Coleman, who promised to push for tenant protections. Emily, though thrilled, felt the pressure mounting. She wasn't just a kid with a hunch anymore. She was a key witness. Foster prepped her for questions from investigators, warning her to stick to facts. "You're credible because you're honest," he said. Emily nodded, clutching her notebook filled with sketches of the crest. The tenants' morale soared, but Harold fought back. He hired a lawyer, Mr. Victor Lang, who sent cease and desist letters to outspoken tenants like Clara. Emily overheard Laura arguing with Daniel about the risks. "What if we lose our home?" Laura whispered. Emily's heart sank. She hadn't meant to scare her mom. But Laura saw her daughter's determination and softened. "You're braver than I was at your age," she said, hugging Emily tightly. That night, Emily snuck out to check the warehouse again, alone this time. The crest was still there, but the lot was empty, as if Harold was covering his tracks. Jessica, the reporter, kept in touch, publishing follow-ups that named Harold directly. Public pressure grew, and the housing authority scheduled a hearing. Emily was nervous but prepared, her evidence organized in a binder. At school, kids whispered about her detective work, and Mia proudly called her a hero. Yet Emily felt the weight of Harold's glare when she passed his office. One day he cornered her near the mailboxes. "You think you're clever," he hissed. "This won't end well for you." Emily's knees shook, but she stared back, thinking of Clara's eviction notice and Daniel's broken heater. The hearing was packed. Emily sat with Laura clutching her binder. Foster presented their case showing the deed, photos, and tenant testimonies. Emily spoke last, her voice clear despite her nerves. She described the Crest, the warehouse, and Harold's threats. The room fell silent as she held up her sketch of the eagle. The lead investigator, Ms. Diane Walsh, nodded thoughtfully. Harold's lawyer argued the evidence was circumstantial, but the tenant's unified front was undeniable. Emily's heart raced as Walsh promised a ruling soon. Outside, tenants cheered and Mia hugged Emily. "You did it," she said, but Emily knew it wasn't over. That night the fog rolled into Willow Creek, thicker than ever. Emily stared out her window, the Crest vivid in her mind. Harold was cornered but dangerous. She wasn't just a little girl anymore. She was a force, and the enemy Crest was no match for her resolve. The hearing's aftermath brought a tense calm to Willow Creek. The housing authority's ruling was pending, but Harold's grip weakened. Tenants reported fewer threats and repairs, though slow, began. Emily's binder of evidence had become a symbol of their fight, passed around at tenant meetings. She felt proud but restless. Harold hadn't given up. She spotted his car at the warehouse again, now with new plates as if he was dodging scrutiny. Emily texted Jessica, who promised to keep investigating. "You've got a knack for this," Jessica said, half joking. Emily smiled but felt the weight of being the little girl who'd sparked a movement. At home, Laura was more involved, helping organize tenants and sharing Emily's story with neighbors. "You're changing things, Em," she said, her voice proud but worried. Emily noticed her mom's stress, late nights working, fearing retaliation. To ease the tension, Emily and Mia planned a community potluck to boost morale. Over 30 tenants came, bringing casseroles and stories of Harold's bullying. Daniel shared how he'd fixed Clara's heater himself, defying Harold's neglect. The event felt like a victory, but Emily overheard whispers of Harold meeting with developers, hinting at a last-ditch effort to sell. Foster warned the tenants to stay vigilant. He'd found more documents tying Crest Holdings to offshore accounts, suggesting Harold was hiding profits. Emily's photos of the warehouse were key, showing deliveries that didn't match official records. She felt a mix of excitement and fear. Her work was making a difference, but Harold's lawyer was pushing back, claiming the tenants were harassing an honest businessman. Emily knew the truth, but doubt gnawed at her. What if the authority ruled in Harold's favor? She couldn't let her neighbors down. One foggy morning, Emily saw Harold loading boxes into his car, the eagle crest gleaming on a folder. She snapped a photo, her heart pounding. Later, she showed it to Foster, who recognized the folder's logo from a shady real estate firm. "This could be the final nail," he said. Emily felt a surge of hope but also dread. Harold was desperate, and desperate men were unpredictable. She started carrying a small whistle Laura gave her, just in case. At night she dreamed of the Crest, its eagle chasing her through fog. But she woke determined, sketching it with fierce strokes, turning fear into fuel. The potluck had unified the tenants, and Senator Coleman's office reached out, offering support. Emily's evidence was now part of a broader investigation into Crest Holdings, statewide dealings. She wasn't just fighting for Willow Creek anymore. Her work could protect others. The fog of uncertainty lingered, but Emily's vision was clear. The little girl no one took seriously was now a leader, and the enemy Crest was on the verge of defeat. The housing authorities' ruling came on a crisp November morning, and Emily's heart raced as Laura read the letter aloud. Harold was found guilty of violating tenant rights, with Crest Holdings ordered to halt all property sales and pay fines. Eviction notices were voided and repairs were mandated. The tenants erupted in cheers at Clara's apartment, hugging Emily tightly. "You did this, kid," Daniel said, ruffling her hair. Emily grinned, but her eyes scanned the room for threats. Harold hadn't shown up since the hearing, and his absence felt ominous. Jessica's articles had drawn national attention, and a TV crew interviewed Emily, though Laura insisted her face be blurred for safety. Emily spoke confidently, describing how she'd spotted the Crest through the fog and followed her instincts. The reporter called her Willow Creek's young hero, and Mia teased her endlessly at school. But Emily stayed focused, helping Foster monitor Harold's compliance. They learned he'd been slapped with a personal fine and was under scrutiny for tax evasion. The warehouse was raided, revealing documents that tied Crest Holdings to illegal deals. Emily's photos were pivotal, her sharp eyes vindicated. Yet Harold didn't vanish quietly. One evening, Emily found a note slipped under their door. "You'll regret this." Her stomach dropped, but she showed it to Laura, who called the police. Foster suspected Harold was lashing out, his empire crumbling. The tenants, now a tight-knit group, kept watch, with Daniel patrolling the complex at night. Emily felt safer but couldn't shake the fear. She stopped biking alone and Laura walked her to school. The fog seemed to follow her, a reminder of the Crest's lingering shadow. Senator Coleman pushed for a state task force on predatory landlords, citing Emily's case. At a town hall, Emily was invited to speak. Nervously, she described the tenants' struggles, holding up her sketch of the Crest. The crowd applauded and Coleman shook her hand. "You're proof anyone can make a difference," she said. Emily felt taller, but at home she was still a kid, helping Laura with dishes and joking with Mia. The victory was sweet, but the note haunted her. She kept her binder close, adding new notes about Harold's movements just in case. Weeks later, Harold's car was gone for good. Rumors spread he'd left town, his lawyer abandoning the case. The complex got a new manager, Ms. Linda Hayes, who prioritized repairs. Clara's heater hummed and Daniel's rent was stabilized. Emily walked through the complex, seeing neighbors smile again. The fog had lifted and the Eagle Crest was just a memory. Emily, the little girl no one took seriously, had won, not just for herself but for everyone. Her notebook lay open, the Crest sketch faded but triumphant, a symbol of justice served. Life in Willow Creek settled into a new rhythm. The complex buzzed with small victories, fresh paint on walls, fixed pipes, and a community garden Emily helped start. Tenants greeted her warmly, some calling her Detective Parker. She blushed but loved it. Laura, less stressed, began smiling more, even baking cookies for tenant meetings. Emily felt proud but kept her eyes sharp, haunted by Harold's note. Though he'd left, she wondered if he'd return. She kept her binder updated, a habit now, sketching anything suspicious, though the eagle crest no longer appeared. Jessica's reporting earned her an award, and she credited Emily in her acceptance speech, sending her a signed copy of the article. Emily framed it, hanging it beside her bed. At school, her story inspired a civics project with Mia and others researching tenant rights. Emily guided them, her confidence growing. Yet she stayed humble, helping Clara weed the garden or biking with Mia for fun, not detective work. The fog of fear was gone, replaced by a sense of purpose. But Emily knew power could corrupt anyone. She watched Ms. Hayes closely, just in case. One spring day, Foster called with news. Crest Holdings was dissolved, its assets seized. Harold faced charges in another state linked to fraud. Emily's evidence had sparked a domino effect, exposing similar schemes. She felt a quiet thrill. She'd changed lives beyond Willow Creek. At a tenant barbecue, Daniel raised a glass to her. To Emily, who saw through the fog, cheers echoed and Laura hugged her tightly. Emily grinned, but her mind wandered to the note, a reminder to stay vigilant. She started a blog anonymously, sharing tips for tenants facing unfair landlords. It gained traction with comments from across the country. Emily realized her fight wasn't just about Harold, it was about empowering others. She wasn't a little girl anymore, but a voice for justice. The crest, once a symbol of greed, was now her badge of courage. As summer approached, Emily walked through Willow Creek, the fog long gone, her heart light but ready. She'd faced the enemy and won, and she'd do it again if needed.